Western Sydney Airport has released its preliminary flight path report into its 24-hour operations. Residents in Penrith, Blacktown, Mount Druitt and Prospect Reservoir are expected to be the most affected by the aircraft noise during the night. An online tool goes live today to help outline the implications of the nighttime arrivals and departures. The airport is expected to open in 2026. The federal government says paths were designed to minimise flights over residential areas, particularly during the night.
There's great news stories around Western Sydney International Airport, but the flight paths, the balance of having that against an aeroplane going really low over your head down the high street of Penrith, we just can't have that. It will be really noisy in Penrith if it's not fair for our community.
Joining us with more on this is Business Western Sydney Executive Director David Borger. David, really appreciate your time. Thank you. I know broadly you are a big supporter of the airport, but do businesses in the area have any concerns today after seeing those flight path plans?
Look, I think businesses in the area are going to welcome the opportunity to connect to the world. Of course, some of the flight paths go via part of the Blue Mountains. The planes will be, altitude's an important factor here. People look at a line on a map and think, wow, that's going to really impact me. But you've also got to look at how far the plane will be from your house or your business. They've avoided most of the main tourist areas in the Blue Mountains, like Katoomba. And I think, people have got to understand Western Sydney Airport's very different to, say, Sydney Airport or many other airports around Australia. For 30 years, governments have actually designed this airport to prevent sort of dense residential populations nearby. So, some people will be affected. There's a noise tool. Encourage everyone to go online and have a look at how it's going to... But really, we need to avoid some of the alarmist discussion, I think, that's been out and around today about, 60 decibels sounding like a lawnmower when it's more like a conversation.
Yeah, and would you include those comments we just played from the Liberal MP, Melissa McIntosh, in that? She's talking about it flying low over High Street in her electorate.
Yeah, look, some of these neighbourhoods in Western Sydney are actually a long distance from the airport. So Blacktown, I know this is probably a national program, but Blacktown, for example, is the same distance as Manly on the coast of Sydney to Kingsford Smith. Now, I think people that have been to Manly, the things they remember are not going to be about aircraft noise. It's a great area with high amenity and it's a long way. It's 18 kilometres, frankly, from the airport. So, look, I think this has had bipartisan support from the former government, back to Tony Abbott, all the way to the current Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. It's got support across the parties. Contracts have been issued. The construction of the terminal, the runways are pretty much finished. The terminal's almost finished. It's happening. And, of course, there are a small number of people that will be impacted in places like Silverdale. And government's got to think through how they consult and how they work through those areas. But generally, compared to other airports globally, there is a lot of open ground. There's a lot of open paddock between the planes and where people live.
Okay, and the flip side of all of this is, of course, the investment that's going to be flowing from this airport being there. How's that looking? What is the outlook in terms of how many jobs it's going to bring in? What are you expecting in terms of that cash injection into Western Sydney?
So there are literally tens of thousands of jobs that will emanate from the airport, from the business park next to the airport, from adjoining places like Bradfield, which is a new city that will be connected by metro. Of course, we're building a metro to connect from St Mary's, a train station, all the way to this airport. And along that new train line, there will be new stations, and those stations will be places of economic activity, of residential housing and so on. So this will have a transformational impact on the region, and it will also connect a place like Western Sydney, a very big part of Australia, to the world. And in the 19th century, cities often built themselves around seaports and central railway stations. They were the places of great connection. Being adjacent to them was critical. In the current economy, being close to an airport is actually very valuable as well.
And how many extra visitors are you expecting in the area as a result?
Look, there'll be a ramp up, but we would expect. Qantas has announced they're going into the airport. Other airlines will follow. There will be customs. There will be international. We would expect millions of international visitors to be able to come into Sydney as Sydney starts to reach its cap and its capacity. And of course, the other opportunity with this airport is the fact that it doesn't have a curfew, unlike Sydney, which will help with some passenger traffic. No one likes to sort of, always fly overnight. People do want to come in at different times, particularly at times late at night when the freeway has a lot of capacity in it. So look, we think this is going to be a transformational opportunity for Western Sydney, and in the main, people have already voted. They've supported this. It hasn't been a feature at recent elections. It's got the support of most of the community, and of course we've got to work through these noise paths and the EIS that'll come out later this year. Some people will be affected, but I think really the number is very small compared to Sydney.
Yeah, well, there's no going back now, is there? It's well and truly underway. David, thank you. We'll keep an eye on how that debate over the flight paths goes. Appreciate you making the time.
Thank you.